We often learn the most from our mistakes. So today we want to talk about a really, really stupid, awful, dumb mistake that Danny made.
Thank you for that setup. Yeah, let's talk about it. Okay, so back in the day, I was part of a theater production that, because of the nature of the show, was subject to a lot of criticism and scrutiny and got some backlash. Let's just say there was some heat on that show. As we got closer and closer to the actual performance date, there was a friend of ours who decided that it was, well, he backed out. He decided, I can't be a part of this any longer. And here we were at the end of a really long and difficult process, about to be thrown into the fire of having to kind of confront opposition face to face. And one of our key players was no longer there. And to us on the inside of that, or I'll just say to me, I thought that feels like abandonment. That feels like betrayal. In one of our times of greatest needs, you bailed, you're gone. Like, how could you do that to me? And, so a couple days went on where this had happened and I'm fuming, right? I'm just furious. I'm like, he just, how did he not think about us? Did he abandon this? What is he, blah, blah. Like, when I see him, I'm going to tell him this and I'm going to say, oh, that's going to be good. And I'm literally going through a whole script in my head of exactly what I'm going to say to tear apart and vent all my anger and my frustration in this other person. And so I got to a point where I was forced to see them and we were supposed to spend the whole day together. So I met up with them in the morning and I said, before the day begins, I pulled them to the side and I said, hey, before this day even gets started, if we're going to make this work, I need you to talk to me. And it was funny because I had my whole script in my head. It was, long and very emotional and very irrational. And I was about to lay into him. But by some chance, miracle maybe, but a happy mistake, I began by saying, and we're both sitting down in children's chairs. So we're both basically on the ground, 6 inches off the ground in a tiny children's plastic chair. So sitting down there across from them all grumpy. I started by saying, can you help me understand why you backed out on us? And it was funny. I didn't mean to begin with a question. I meant to begin with a lot of statements and a whole pre-list of things. But I happened to accidentally say, can you please explain to me why that happened? And when I did that, he answered my question. And he said, oh, I did it because of this. And, because a relationship would have been destroyed that was really important to me. And as much as I care about this, that person's more important to me. And as much as I care about this and you guys are great, as much as I want to support you, it was actually really hard for me to step down. And I hated that decision, but I felt like it was the right thing to do. And he explained kind of all the different factors that went into his decision to do what he did. And I'm sitting here the whole time, in my grumpy little chair. And as he's going on and on and on, I'm just feeling myself soften. I'm just leaning back a little bit more. I'm like, oh, that's actually a good point. Oh man, that's actually really rough. Oh gosh, yeah, I wouldn't know what to do in that situation. And by the end of him kind of explaining why he did what he did, his perspective, he let me be in his shoes for a moment. And by the time he finished explaining why he did what he did, I'm sitting on the other side. I haven't said a word of my script. And the only thing I can say is, that's really tough. I probably would have done the same thing. And despite all of my anger and all my frustration, it was still really hard for me. But having sat in his seat, his tiny little plastic seat, for just those few minutes, I realized, okay, there are things I wasn't seeing. And now that I understand them, I can have empathy. I can have compassion. I can have understanding for why you did what you did and realize that you didn't do it to hurt me. You did it because you thought you were doing what was best.
And I think a lot of times in relationships, we think that people are doing things against us.
Yeah.
We think that people are doing things because they're out to get us or because they want to hurt us or because they want to make us feel bad. And the reality is that most of the time, what people do has literally nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's fully based out of what's going on in their heart, in their world,
Yep.
and they're making decisions based on what they know to do best.
Yep.
And so Danny taking that step back literally was a mistake that he did that. This was not this great relational tool that he had. It was a mistake that he actually asked that question.
It was an accident.
Yeah. But if
it was a great idea. It just wasn't really a conscious idea.
Or it wasn't a mistake. It was an accident.
Yeah.
But him choosing to take that step back and say those 3 words, help me understand.
Yeah.
Changed everything.
Yeah.
it turned what could have been this nasty conflict into actually growing deeper in relationship with each other, because he ended up seeing this other side that he never would have been aware of had he chosen to resolutely stand in that place of, you hurt my feelings and you need to pay, or you hurt my feelings and everything is a mess because of you. He was able to really understand where this other person was coming from, and as a result, actually be supportive of the decision, even if he had the short end of the stick. And so in relationships with people, in conflict, if you can take a step back from your emotions, which might take a little bit of effort.
It's tough, but very valuable. If you can
take a step back and you can say, help me understand why you did that. And genuinely listen to them. Genuinely take a step into their shoes and go, I'm going to try my best to view things from your perspective. When you do that, you make them feel seen and heard and known. And rather than it being this nasty conflict, it can turn into you being better connected than ever.
Yeah. And another really important thing to consider with conflict is that 90% of conflict is either miscommunication, a misperception, or unrealistic expectations or uncommunicated expectations. Those are not intentional things. These are just things that happen because everyone is
people
different.
People are living their life.
Because we're not all inside each other's heads. So they're all unintentional consequences of just living our lives. But 90% of the things that we have conflict about aren't even like evil or not malicious. It's just a misunderstanding, or like, oh, you valued something and I valued something else. Or you thought something was going to happen, but something else happened. I think when you take the time to understand somebody else's perspective, usually what you learn is that this person is not this dumb, angry, evil monster. They're actually a smart, compassionate person who just made a decision that I didn't agree with, or who valued something different than what I valued, or I thought was doing it for one reason, but was actually doing it for another reason. People usually aren't as bad as we sometimes think that they are. And just because they hurt us doesn't mean that they even did a bad thing. It might just be a miscommunication, a misperception, or an unrealistic or an uncommunicated expectation. And in this case, it was just a misperception. I wasn't seeing what he was seeing. And when I did, I realized you're actually a good person. I respect the hell out of you, even though I hate what you did. And I still want to be a part of your life. And I hope you still want to be a part of mine. And that is how conflict should end. Oh my God. Can you imagine if all your conflict ended with mutual respect and understanding?
It's because every conflict truly is an opportunity for greater connection.
Yeah.
And if we don't recognize that, then we view conflict as one of us needs to win. We'll get into all of that later. There's so much more to talk about with that. But view conflict as a potential for greater connection. And if you do that, you will see your relationships grow stronger as a result.
Conflict should be something that brings people together, not something that drives people apart. So when you do conflict correctly, in this case by accident, it brought us closer together despite hurt feelings and a lot of disagreement. So don't be afraid of conflict, just be willing to do it correctly.